Today to talk about why babies have eczema and why we have seen such an increasing prevalence of eczema in our little babies. Why is this happening? And if you are interested in learning more about this, but you don't have time to join this discussion, definitely check out my blog that I just released. It is in the link in my bio. So just click blog. And if you are interested in just learning more about the root causes of eczema, definitely check out my free eczema guide. All right. So, why are we seeing this increasing prevalence of eczema in our babies? Well, we are seeing this for a couple of different reasons. And the first one is really antibiotic usage. Antibiotic usage is really increasing first of all, in pregnant mothers. And so that really affects the microbiome of mom. And then antibiotic usage also in our babies as well too. But why are our babies being born with eczema? Well, microbiome is a big one. And so if you check out my free eczema guide, you're going to see a lot about microbiome imbalances. And this is number one on my list in terms of problems that we really see in terms of the root cause of eczema. So microbiome imbalance is a big one. So antibiotic usage, again, moms, babies, etc., is really messing up the microbiome. And our microbiome is really our army against the world. It really allows us to have a healthy immune function. And with eczema, we see that with the microbiome imbalances, we are seeing that you don't have this healthy army that's protecting you and also helping you to, just manage inflammation in your system. And so when you can't manage that inflammation, you're going to have an increased level of inflammation. What this is going to look like is eczema. Toxic exposures is our second one, and this is actually my big number two root cause of eczema is toxic burden. And we see that toxic exposures are transferred from mom to baby. And we see that this is happening when moms are pregnant via the placenta and then also via breast milk postpartum. And this is a big problem because unfortunately, toxins have been increasing in our world. And the prevalence of eczema in our babies is increasing actually from 1997 until now. So, over the last 27 years, we have seen an increase of eczema in babies from 8% to 15%. So, almost double in terms of the rates of eczema among our infants. And so this is a really scary, scary number. And why is that happening? Well, in our world, we are using more antibiotics. We are having more toxic exposures, and this is ever increasing. And this is why we are seeing more of a prevalence of eczema in our infants. And that's what we are talking about today. All right. So, moms, yes, unfortunately, we can transfer those toxins to our babies, and this can be another root cause. Use of formula instead of breastfeeding can be another problem. And of course, sometimes we don't have the option to breastfeed, and that's okay. But it can be another problem that can also lead to this higher prevalence of eczema that we are seeing in our babies. And why is that the case? Well, first of all, breast milk has a number of important nutrients that formula may not have, including antibodies that support the immune function of the baby. In addition, formulas can have quite toxic components, including things like heavy metals, and inflammatory foods like cow's milk, depending on what type of formula you are consuming. If this is not an organic formula, there can be pesticides and other just toxic components that we are feeding to our little babies right at the get go. So that's a possibility. So if you are, wanting to or needing to give your baby formula, definitely try to go clean with this formula, organic. I also have found that. Rather than cow's milk dairy, sometimes goat's milk dairy works really well and doesn't stimulate as much as an inflammatory process if you're doing that. So check out my blog and you'll see some links there for clean organic formulas that you can check out. The next reason we might have a rising prevalence of eczema in our babies is C-section. So when babies are born via C-section, we are not uh, allowing them to get the great microbiome from mom through the vaginal canal, and this can be a problem. And of course, something that we most of the time cannot help. um fear not. If you had a baby by c-section, definitely consider working with my team or other natural practitioners to really help bring back the microbiome, or bring a healthy microbiome for your baby, because your baby may not have been born with that healthy microbiome, which then, of course, as we spoke about with the antibiotic usage, could be leading to more inflammation in the system, which then leads to eczema. Okay. Toxins in the environment once baby is born. And this is a really big one. There are so many things you can do to make sure that you are limiting the toxic exposures your baby is having. Some of the most important ones would be water. So, checking out your tap water, making sure that you are filtering the shower water, the tub water, the drinking water. Check out the product recommendations on the link in my bio, and you will see some filter recommendations. You also want to maybe consider filtering the air. The air in our homes can be quite toxic as well. So, that's another one. And then I have a picture here of a pet, which kind of seems looks a little bit random, but pets are a big one in the environment too, and pets can release dander. All pets release dander. In fact, even if you have a hypoallergenic animal, pets in the environment can release the dander, and that dander can actually stimulate an inflammatory process as well too. So another one to think about in the environment. And I will often, see babies who have pets in their home, and then we test them for allergy or even sensitivity to these danders, and then we do see that. I see that quite frequently, actually. I don't think I've seen a case where they had a pet and then I didn't see an allergy or a sensitivity that came up. And now, is that a true allergy? Is it something that's happening because there's just inflammation in the body overall? It's hard to say, but that is something to think about in terms of toxins in the environment once baby is born. Something to definitely think about if you have pets. Okay. And then mom's exposure to mold and other microbial imbalances is very important. There were studies that showed that prenatal exposure to mold, so mom being exposed to mold in the environment or even through food, could stimulate an inflammatory reaction in babies and lead to a higher prevalence of eczema in those babies who were born via mom who had a prenatal exposure to mold. And then, of course, mold exposure currently as well too. So thinking about mold in your home. So if you are concerned about mold in your home and you have a baby with eczema, definitely go to the product recommendations in the link in my bio and check out the test section. um, and then there is a company called Immunolytics, and they do a great job, a very inexpensive kind of screen to check for mold in the environment. Okay. So what do we do for these things? Like, it's pretty crazy, right? That number of, from 1997 until now, an increase in almost double the amount of infants being born with eczema. And that number overall is actually 20% of our infants have eczema. That is a scary number. That is a big number, right? Why is this happening? And I would call this an epidemic. This is a big problem. Um, and why is this happening? Well, we can see now that this is actually, environmental things that are happening in our world. These are modern problems that are happening because of the industries. And number one is the conventional medical industry with antibiotics is a big one that are being given to people, that sometimes can be prevented, the usage of that antibiotics. Now, so, how can you prevent the usage of antibiotics? Well, I would definitely recommend working with a naturopathic doctor, somebody who, understands how to get to the root cause of the issue rather than just throwing, an antibiotic at you. Supporting the immune system to actually overcome infection is a big possibility, or even just the prevention of infections, because the immune system is so is so strong. So working with a naturopathic doctor, that is something we do definitely at Clean Body. So you can check the link in my bio, book a consultation if you want to meet me and just kind of discuss what that would look like. So, sometimes we need antibiotics, and that's for emergency situations, but often I think we are finding that we're using antibiotics when we don't really need to. Okay. So that's something to think about. Toxic exposures transferred from mom to baby. So, how do we deal with this? Well, number one, moms, before we get pregnant, we really need to think about this. And I do highly recommend anybody who is thinking about getting pregnant, spend at least 3 months doing a detox before you get pregnant so that you can clean up all of the toxins that you might be exposing your child to once you get pregnant. So that's a big one and something I would highly recommend. And at Clean Body, we do have cleanses that we can definitely prescribe to you, or you also can access these protocols if this is something you want to consider doing. And hello, Dr. Brian, a fellow naturopathic doctor who also works with eczema patients. And he says, I heard an MD speak about who antibiotics are overprescribed for viral infections like colds. Yeah, so we're being prescribed antibiotics are targeting bacterial infections when we have something like a viral infection. Dr. Brian is right here. So sometimes incorrectly being prescribed antibiotics is another thing that's happening, right? Back to toxic exposures transferred from mom to baby. So I think it's really important prenatally. Now, let's say you're pregnant and you didn't do a cleanse prior to, you didn't clean up your system. Don't worry. I would just say definitely focus on making sure your environment is super clean right now, making sure that all the food you're putting into your mouth on a daily basis, that's 3 to 5 times a day, that you are making sure that you are eating healthy food and that is non-GMO, that is organic. All of those are important. Nothing with preservatives and food coloring and all of those things that we just don't need. Eating whole, real food is what I would recommend. And then making sure that you are going through and cleaning up everything from, as I mentioned, your tap water, the air, the products you're using. If you want help with this, we have a membership where you can access all that information and all of our resources. Or, of course, working with our team, we can kind of help you with that individually on an individual basis. Okay. All right. Using formula instead of breastfeeding as one of the problems. Of course, when we can, breastfeeding is wonderful, but some of us are not able to breastfeed, and that's okay. So, looking at clean formulas is very important. Check the link in my bio, product recommendations, and go to food. And you can see it all the way at the bottom, some organic baby formulas that we recommend. Uh, if your baby has eczema, sometimes doing a goat's milk versus a cow's milk version, I do notice has helped some of my patients. So that's a possibility. However, sometimes if you have a cow's milk allergy, you may also have a goat's milk. But goat's milk is sometimes more tolerated. Someone is asking, do you think milks such as almond milk contribute to toxins in breast milk while breastfeeding? No. So not necessarily. I would say some people have an allergy or a sensitivity to almonds, and if you do, that could be increasing your inflammatory process, which may affect your baby. And then also, your baby may be having a sensitivity or allergy reaction to the almonds that you are providing via your breast milk. So that's something to think about. With almond milk, you do want to try to do, with any type of milk, try to do organic with the least amount of fillers would be really great. One that is EWG verified, it's called Kiki milk. Which is nice for mom to drink potentially, or even toddlers if you guys have a toddler. Okay. So that is the whole milk thing. Oh, hi, Ariana. Hi, nice to see you here. All right. C-sections. Okay. So yes, of course, most of the time when we have a C-section, this is not something that we can help, right? So, but there's a couple problems here. Baby, again, doesn't go through the birth canal, via the vaginal birth canal, meaning that baby misses out on a lot of the microbiome. The other problem is that with C-sections, often mom might have been given some antibiotics, so that's another thing. So we just need to handle this postpartum, right? So I would definitely work with a naturopathic doctor. You can work with my team as well, where we can really support the microbiome of baby. Also, mom as well, if mom had a C-section and was taking antibiotics, okay? And then microbial imbalance, toxins in the environment. This is making sure that, again, as we see in this picture here, pets are potentially an allergen or a toxin for babies. So the dander that comes from cats, dogs, rodents, and even birds. Okay, I just did a live and a blog on that, so check that out if you do have pets, and check out my last post if you're interested in learning more about that. Okay, but also things like mold, and then all of your products. You guys need to be thinking about your cleaning products, your lotions, all of those things. And if you need resources there, again, my product recommendations, and also we have a membership where you can gather those resources. And then mom's exposure. So if you are currently pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant, it may be something you want to do is just make sure your environment is totally clean before you get started. And again, using our resources can be really helpful there, thinking about joining our membership, etc. Okay. I would love to open it up to any questions that people have now about and what we are talking about. I'll go back to the slide previously because I know this slide doesn't really tell us exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about why babies have eczema, why it is such an increasing problem in today's world. Why do 20% of infants have eczema? That is a crazy number to me. And why over the last 27 years have we seen a doubling of eczema, the prevalence of eczema in our babies over the last 27 years? Why is this happening? It's a very scary thing, especially for parents. You have a baby who is just born into this world, and now all of a sudden this baby has eczema, and sometimes it can be extremely severe. So this is something we really want to understand, pay attention to, and really understand how to get to the root cause. Because if we are just giving our baby medications, those medications are not addressing the root cause and will potentially lead to side effects down the line. So we really need to protect our babies. Okay. All right, so someone is asking, please go ahead and type some questions now into the chat box. I would love to answer your questions about baby eczema is what we're talking about. And someone is asking how to help my 5-month-old with eczema on his face. What can I do to start? Okay, so first off, we really want to do some better things topically is one thing I would recommend, just kind of starting from the outside in, because often, the first thing that we're given from a conventional doctor is just medications, right? Topical steroids. And now we're being given even more serious medications like biologics, Dupixent, etc. So if you are just doing topical stuff right now, first I would kind of think about what you're doing topically. We are releasing a clean skin kit in June, and I'm really excited about it. So the clean skin kit includes something to help cleanse and calm the skin, which is hypochlorous acid, which I really love, and a topical probiotic, because as I mentioned, microbiome imbalances are a big one. And Staph aureus is a type of bacteria that often can cause a lot of problems for eczema people. And often that is one of the big, bacterial infections that happens. And often when we have a flare and we have just a lot of itchiness, Staph aureus is sometimes and most often a part of that. So the first two products in this kit are one, hypochlorous acid, which is great at killing off staph. and doing this in a natural way, because hypochlorous acid is something that our white blood cells actually make naturally. So it is a natural product. Then we do need to restore the microbiome. So a topical probiotic is really a great thing to use. And then finally, we need to make sure that any leakiness in the skin is sealed up. So a really good protective ointment is what I might recommend for most people with eczema. And some things that are in a lot of these like Vaseline type ointments is petroleum and mineral oil. And we really want to get away from using those because those can have some toxic components if they are not, white petroleum and completely clean. So if you're looking at Vaseline or Aquaphor, these might have some of these components that I don't really love. So other more natural products might have soy and coconut. So our Clean Skin Protect is free of coconut, nuts, gluten, all of these allergens that I have found to be irritable in a lot of my eczema patients. So if you are starting topically, just kind of switching out what you're doing topically, that is one of the first places to start. But really, truly, to heal eczema, you really need to think about the internal system. That's really where you need to go for this, okay? And what you'll need to do there is really work with someone individually. If you guys are interested in working with my team, we are offering 30% off right now using the code MDIG until the end of May. This is actually our Memorial Day discount, and the link is in my bio. So where you would start if you were kind of really wanting to address the root cause, the internal environment, is book a consultation. Definitely make sure to use this code so you can get a discount. And and in the meantime, start by changing out what you're doing topically. And then, I do have a lot of resources. So if you do check my free eczema guide, you can see some of the things you can start doing now, like improving diet, eliminating things like GMO foods and conventional foods that are not organic. Maybe avoiding some inflammatory foods for the moment to see if eliminating these foods can help, maybe something helpful. But I do usually recommend working with a team if you're going to remove foods, just to make sure that you're not removing things that, are bringing nutrition to your system. But then cleaning everything up, going through all of your products and all of that. Like I mentioned earlier, filtering your water, filtering your air. These are all places you can start. But then it's really important to work with a team who understands how to get to the root cause, who really focuses on eczema. I think eczema is a very special disease because when you start to move things in the body, unfortunately, the eczema can flare. And so working with someone who really understands this, I think, is important. So for the person who asked here, 5-month-old with eczema on his face, what do I do to start? That's where you get started. So change what you can. But often, there really needs to be a very thorough evaluation of what the actual root causes are for your child, because that will be different for everybody. If you want to get a better idea of what the root causes are, check out my free eczema guide. The link is in my bio. And it kind of breaks down the top 6 root causes that I have found across the board for almost all of my eczema patients. You can kind of understand that a little bit more in terms of getting down to the root causes. Okay. And then Dr. Bryant, again, a fellow naturopathic doctor who also treats eczema, is saying, I found that fiber is a key foundational component for most of my atopic derm patients. Yeah. And fiber is so important for that microbial aspect we were talking about, right? In terms of the microbial aspect, when you eat really good fiber will actually selectively feed your beneficial bacteria, your good bacteria. And when you eat sugar, you're actually feeding all of the bugs, good and bad. But when you eat fiber, you're really selectively feeding the good bacteria, which is why that's so important when we kind of get down to what the root causes are. That microbial imbalance is really, really important. And one of the top actually, my imbalance that I really find in my eczema patients. And so, yes, Dr. Bryant, fiber is a really important one. So I love that. All right. Any other questions regarding, and again, we are talking about why your baby might have eczema, And why are babies in general, the babies being born, having so much eczema nowadays? That is what we're talking about today. If you guys are interested in getting evaluated by myself and my team, we are offering 30% off the discovery consultation. Until the end of May, and you can use the code MDIG if you're interested in that. Okay. So I would love to just open it up to more questions. And again, this is what we're talking about here. Why does your baby have eczema? So please, if you have any questions about this, anything you would like to discuss, this is a big question that I often get when I talk about the root causes of eczema. Often people ask me, well, Dr. Fong, my baby was just born. How can my baby have all of these issues? And if you guys are interested and you missed this live, definitely check out my blog. I just wrote about this. So click the link in my bio and click blog, and you can read the blog that has all this information. Okay. All right. Someone is saying I have a 2-year-old with eczema. We've seen a dermatologist and an allergist. I feel like nothing is working, no steroids or creams or home remedies. He's a picky eater, so not a wide variety of foods. Okay. So if there's a couple of things here. If your child started using steroids and they were working initially, but then they stopped working, it's a possibility that your child is going into a withdrawal situation where this is when basically you keep using more and more and more steroids, but the steroids stop working. Now that's if you started using them and then they stopped working. If they are just not working in general, that's just because you are not getting to the root cause, unfortunately, right? So you are just by putting those steroids, you're really just silencing the symptoms. You're not getting to the root cause. And unfortunately, a dermatologist, is not equipped or designed to do that. Often the answer is typically more so in, what can you do topically? Um, Allergists are looking for one thing as well. They're just looking for allergies. And there's so many other things we need to be looking at that can cause eczema. So definitely check out my free eczema guide so you can kind of understand a little bit more about what really we should be looking for. And unfortunately, you may not find that in a dermatologist or an allergist. I would recommend looking into working with a naturopathic doctor like myself, um, or an integrative doctor who kind of understands how to get to the root cause. And testing that would be important to understand the root cause are things like understanding the microbiome. So, doing a stool test to see what the microbiome actually looks like, what good bugs, what bad bugs are there. Um, Looking at toxic burden, because that is number 2 on my root cause list, and seeing what toxins this child might be exposed to. And again, those could be from mom. Mom could have transferred those over, or maybe those are in the environment that the child is living in, or the personal products and laundry detergent and all those things that you might be using. You also want to look into mold. So we could test the home for mold. We can test the baby for mold as well too. Um, we can look at tap water and test the tap water. We can, there's so many root cause issues. Now, everybody is not going to have the same issue. So what we really need to do is figure out what is the combination of root cause issues for you. And I will have to say it's typically not just one thing. It's typically multiple different problems that could be causing the issue. Okay. So we really need to piece it together almost like a puzzle. And we have to be investigators to really understand. Okay. And it's not exactly how the conventional model is designed. So you may not find that in the conventional model, and you may need to look outside of that. Again, naturopathic medicine or integrative medicine are places to look. And again, we are offering a 30% off consultation with myself. Using MDIG for Memorial Day, and that does expire at the end of May, okay? All right, my 10-month-old has eczema. He's currently on formula. What milk should I switch him to at 12 months? Okay. So I wouldn't just switch him right now. I would think about the formula he's on potentially, and potentially think about changing that out. Of course, working with a practitioner is important here. This live is not for me to necessarily provide you with medical advice, but to provide you with information so that you can have the tools to navigate, this whole world, which I think is a different world once you start to dive into it. If you check the blog, so click the link in my bio and click blog, and you go all the way down to the bottom, there are some links for some alternative type formulas. They are organic. And then there are some formulas there that are not made of cow's milk, they are made of goat's milk. So that's a possibility. There's also a possibility to make your own milk as well. So those are all potential things to do. And I think what milk should you switch to at 12 months? I really think you should be working with a nutritionist or someone who can make sure that you're still giving your child the nutrients they need while eliminating things that might be triggering an immune reaction. Okay. How do you know if they have a milk allergy? Okay, so if you worked with a naturopathic doctor like myself, if you worked with my team, we would test that usually at the beginning. And it's a blood test that is checking for both an allergy, and we also look for sensitivities too. Allergy is not the only thing to look for, because sometimes you might actually not be having a true allergy, but maybe just a sensitivity type reaction, and that is something an allergist often doesn't check. Sometimes they do, but often they don't check for sensitivities. And sometimes those could be more problematic because you are eating something all the time, exposing yourself all the time. And rather than having this immediate reaction, you're having this delayed reaction or even a low level reaction that's very hard to figure out, right? So that's where the testing can be really helpful. We do offer this test as a direct order test on my website. If you wanted to check that out, go to the link in my bio and click order labs. Or working with my team is a really good idea so that we can kind of figure out what the right tests are for you and your child, rather than just kind of doing everything under the sun. Okay. I have three kids. My oldest is 8. He does not have eczema, but my second son has eczema. He's 2 years old, and his dad has always had eczema. I thought eczema was genetic. There is absolutely a potentially a genetic component of eczema. That does not mean that there is nothing you can do. Okay. What is important here is this idea called epigenetics. And epigenetics is the study of what you do in your life and what the environment and you're exposed to, what foods you eat will actually affect the expression of your genetics. So even though someone might be predisposed to having eczema, they don't necessarily form eczema just right off the bat. Usually there is an offending factor that might trigger the eczema, and that person had a predisposition to that expression of that. So I'm, predisposed to having eczema, whereas my sister is not predisposed to having eczema, but she's predisposed to having another symptom or another disease, but triggered by often lifestyle and nutritional factors. So, um, with you, with the three children and the oldest that doesn't have eczema, but you have a 2 year old with eczema, my questions would be, okay, what was different prior to that pregnancy? Did you have some exposures that were different? Do you have mold in your home now? Was there a water leak and then all of a sudden there's mold? And so that 2 year old was exposed to mold, right when they were born, or maybe you were exposed to mold when you were pregnant. So it's really an unraveling of your story that we really need to understand. And everybody's story is going to be different. The unraveling is going to be different for everybody. The puzzle pieces will be different for everybody. So it's really not as easy as 1 + 1 = 2. It's often 1 + 8 + 10 + 4 + 9 equals whatever that is, right? And we really need to take a 360 approach to analyze all the different parts of your life, including nutrition and lifestyle, toxic exposures, microbe exposures, microbiome health. All of those things need to be assessed in order for us to understand how to really help. So that is what the consultation is for. I will actually do that evaluation at that consultation. We also do offer 100% money back guarantee. So if for for any reason you don't feel like you have gotten so much information about the root causes of eczema for you or your baby, then you can ask for your money back and we will give you your money back. Okay. Will probiotics help for babies? So probiotics are definitely something we want to think about. Now, is that going to help every person with eczema? Possibly, possibly not. Um, probiotics are not the only thing to think about. First, we need to think about, why are the probiotics low? Okay. Is the person eating a lot of sugar? So they're feeding the bad bugs more than the good bugs. Are they eating not enough fiber? So they're not feeding those good bugs, right? So we need to think about diet. Are they not eating probiotic rich foods, right? Because if you continue to eat sugar and you continue to kind of eat toxic foods and you take probiotics, you may actually not notice an improvement. Okay. So, in your symptoms. Okay. Then, probiotics need to want to live in your gut environment. If your gut environment is so inflamed and so unhealthy, those probiotics may not want to make a home there. So, as much as you take probiotics, it may not help. The other problem with taking probiotics could be that you take the probiotics and all of a sudden your skin symptoms flare. And that is a big sign that you probably have a microbiome imbalance, that when you took those probiotics, the body, all of a sudden said, oh, right, let's wage a war. And then you got, what might be called die-off symptoms or detox reactions. And so in general, yes, probiotics are a good idea for people with eczema, but there's so many factors that come into play. So I think definitely working with someone is really helpful so that you can understand if those factors come up, or if it's not working, why is it not working? Are you using the right strains of bacteria? Are you eating too much sugar still and your diet is unhealthy? So it doesn't matter how many probiotics you take, it just won't work. So those are the things you might want to think about. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation today. Why does your baby have eczema? Again, this is such an increasing problem. 20% of our babies are being born with eczema. And it has been increasing over the last 27 years. We have seen a doubling of the amount of babies who are being born with eczema. And this is scary, right? So if you missed this live, definitely check out. I am going to repost this. So check this out or read my blog. The link is in my bio. I would love to open it up to any other questions anybody has now. We are talking about childhood and infant eczema. If you guys have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box and I'm happy to answer them here. Otherwise, I hope that you all find your answers. If you are dealing with a baby or a child with eczema, this can be such a hard thing and almost a helpless feeling. Like you cannot help your child. You don't know how to help your child. And I am telling you, there are answers. Okay. So read my blog. That's a great place to start. Read my free eczema guide. That's another great place to start. I also have a free masterclass that I'm doing this Saturday. So you guys can also check that out if you wanted to really delve in much deeper and learn more. And we are also offering 30% off our discovery consult right now. So use the code MDIG if you're interested in that. And I hope that you all find the answers. And I know how difficult it can be from a personal place because I was that baby born with eczema. And then I dealt with, thousands of patients in my practice who have had this issue. And I know how heart-wrenching it can be to see your child go through this. Okay. So if you have any other questions, please type into the chat box. I am happy to answer those. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day and I hope that you all find the answers. All right. All right, everyone.